Welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 12. Today we have here Mike, who's going to be talking about kitchen tune-up and how he got started and a little bit of his journey there as a kitchen remodeler. So Mike, just give me a better rundown of who you are, what you do, and how you got here today.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I should back up a little bit and say that we have Kitchen Tune-Up is a franchise, and I actually own both a Kitchen Tune-Up franchise and a Bath Tune-Up franchise. And we have um, a geography that's pretty much Northwest Fort Worth is what we think of it. So if you kind of looked at a map of Fort Worth and looked at a kind of quadrant on the northwest side of that town, that's where we are. Um, anyway, we've been doing this for a couple years. My background before that was I was in IT consulting. I was a IT consulting sales rep, and for a little while, for a few years, I worked for a home builder. So I was at the place in life where if I didn't go out and do something on my own pretty soon, I wasn't ever going to. And I wanted to do that, and I was in a position that I could. So I thought a franchise would make sense because there would be a business model, there would be some kind of form, what we're all offering. The customers would be identified. A lot of that groundwork would be done, and I thought that would compress the time cycle it took to kind of get up and get running. And um, so anyway, I looked into some different franchises. I got help from a franchise consultant, and that was really good. He did a great job for me. His name's Patrick Donahue. So if anybody out there is looking for help like that, I would recommend him. And then we kind of narrowed it down to kitchen tune-up, and there were two things about kitchen tune-up that really impressed me. Um, One of them was I just felt like there would be an ongoing need for kitchen and bath remodeling, right? I could just see that space, there would be plenty of demand. And it looked to me like something I would have fun working in and doing on a day-to-day basis. So there was that, but also the management of Kitchen Tune Up, when they presented their offering, what their business is, they were very organized, very crisp. And I felt like that would translate to how they ran the business, right? And so it was clear to me that they were very clear about what their business is and how they do it. The bath tune-up is a sister to the kitchen tune-up, and I felt like the two just kind of went hand in glove, and it would make a lot of sense to have a business with both those components. So that's how that's how I ended up making that decision. Did I answer the question you asked?
Yeah, yeah, no, you did good, man. And I actually have a couple questions kind of based off what you just said there. So I guess my first question is you said that you really like kind of the structure and the format that Kitchen Tune Up had when you got started. So has that always gone exactly as planned? And what kind of results have you seen so far since starting your branch of Kitchen Tune Up?
So let me just say the positives about both kitchen and bath tune-up, and then I'll talk a little bit about maybe this would be helpful to somebody else considering something like this. Um, Kitchen tune-up and bath tune-up both have great insight into products and services that somebody like me can provide, and great training and great what's the word I'm looking for? Enabling somebody to go out and deliver these services. They have great training on how to go to market and how to get engaged with customers and how to get them into the door. And they give you a great sales process, which of course is really nice. So I would say that kitchen tune-up and bath tune-up. Oh, and the other thing, they have a great supplier network, and that's all there. And so I would say that they do a great job of giving you the tools you need to go out and do what they would expect the franchise owner to do. What I didn't account for, and I think I'm getting better at every day is my background was sales and selling, and I had a decent understanding of tools and how to use them and things like that just because of my own. But I didn't have background as a business owner or a business manager. And so I think if you had run a business before, I think you would be, I mean, I think you could really hit the ground running and do very well with kitchen tune-up and bath tune-up. Where I have struggled is just the learning that I need to do to be a good business owner. It hasn't been, and that's really just my own inexperience as a business owner, frankly. It's not, the tools are there, the all the processes there, everything's there. It's just you, for my own background and history, it's understanding the importance of some of that and then how to leverage it. If I had had a little more depth, I think some of it would come a little faster. That said, still able to go out and find customers and sell jobs and see revenue. So even with my own shortcomings, it's
Yeah.
still viable. Yeah. So
That's good. Well, I mean, honestly, man, the first thing that I see that you've kind of just told me, and the first thing that I think is most important when it comes to having a problem, or even just in business in general, we're constantly required to uh, generate a new self or upgrade ourselves to push to the next level, right? Um,
right.
even just recognizing that, man, that's so big. A lot of people won't take the time out of their day to recognize that, and that's something that I've kind of seen that you were just saying you're right here, like you recognize that, hey, I'm a little bit inexperienced, and that's a good thing. I think I do the same thing, and it's that's good, man. That's a really really good thing you just mentioned right there. How long have you been in business for?
2 years. Yeah, we've been here for 2 years. So we started with the kitchen, and I think this is wise. Kitchen tune-up, bath tune-up. If you take both brands on, they want you to get one up and running before you add the second. You don't try to do both at the same time. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. They required that I wait 6 months to open the bath tune-up. I think they've changed that. I wouldn't swear to that. I think they might expect a year now. And I would tell you from my experience, that's smart. I think a year makes a lot of sense if that's the requirement. I think it probably you would do well to give yourself a year. Yeah, so that would be yeah.
Gotcha. What just out of curiosity, like, it's been 2 years. What is like the biggest lesson that you've learned becoming a business owner in the past 2 years?
Yeah, so this lesson's going to be different for everybody. And you hear this all the time, but uh, we could talk about this for probably the rest of the time. Make the business pay its own way.
Mm.
Um, there's different philosophies out there, and maybe for different people, things work differently. But some people are kind of build it and they will come, and put the capital out there and let the. Um, I would say, given my experience and my background, uh, it's smarter to let the business basically generate revenue and then pay for the marketing and all of that so that you're not going into a rear trying to build a business. You don't want to, it's a gambling term. You don't want to, my lesson is don't bet on the come. Spend
Yeah.
money you got, not, don't spend money you're hoping to make. So that's, that's
That
my,
that can
my
be
big,
especially hard, man. Get into it for the first time. The money starts to roll in, and you're like, oh, well, it's okay. I'm gonna go buy this new truck because I'm gonna get the same money next month, and then all of a sudden it just dries up. That's some advice that I give to some of the guys that I work with sometimes. Like just recently, I had someone who like wanted to like get a new website, and I said, well, man, we haven't even launched the campaign yet. Let's launch the campaign, get that working. Let's get the website in. And I think that doing it
yeah,
that way. And
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
no, I have nothing else. That's pretty much it.
I would say go out and get your first few customers. word of mouth, knocking on doors, do the find some ways to get customers that don't require you to buy advertising or at least to spend a lot of money on advertising and that, and learn how to drive your business so that when money is tight, you can go out and get more customers and you know how to do that. I would say that would be, you know, do it the hard way first, I guess. So
Yeah.
you've got a baseline of what you can go out and drive. Um, and keep your capital for adding people first and then use it to advertise. Kind of I would say, that's kind of it's a two-part thing, right? Get yourself to where you can drive the business you need to drive to cover your overhead and all of that, whatever that is. And then go build your team.
Yeah.
But again, make your business pay for that. Don't that's my lesson. It means it's going to take probably longer to build the business. But I think at the end of the day, you have a more stable business and you have, less debt, right? So,
Yeah, man, it's such a weird, like, when do you do it in terms of like advertising or hiring team members? The way that I've looked at it, it's just that I think we allocate the resource, we allocate money to the things we care about, right? And so the resource we care the least about between time and money, we're going to spend that one, you know? And so from my experience, it's always been very lucrative to either hire that staff member or run ads or do something that even if, like the money, I agree, the money still has to come in from the business, right? But
yeah,
when you get that little bit of cash flow going, that's one thing where I was like, okay, I have extra cash flow. How can we spend this to make the business grow? And
right.
that's something
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I've kind of lived by. I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on that? Have you done that
Oh,
or
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, well, it depends on where you are in the business, right? I mean, for me, for a long time, we need to grow, right? Because we're not going to reach our goals if we're now, if I had a business where we were doing $10 million a year and that, I'd know we need to grow, but I wouldn't be too wrapped around the axle if the growth was 5%, right? But we're talking about I need, not need, I would like to see, just to give you a picture. So we do typically 60 to 80,000 a month in top line revenue. I would really like to see that number three times that number. That's where I really feel like the business is, and that's between both sides of the house. I feel like, first of all, that's very doable. I don't think that's not, if you knew the size of jobs we do and that kind of stuff, that's not that unattainable.
yeah.
Um, but that gives me elbow room. If we're at that level, then I'm comfortable, with spending a little bit of money on advertising and doing some things like that. Whereas up to kind of where we are right now, we're paying the bills, we're fine, but we're not really realizing the kind of income I'd like to realize for myself. I'll say it that way.
Yeah. What, just out of curiosity, what would get, like, what would take you there? Like, what do you think you have to do? Or like, what have you realized that needs to get done in order to get you to that position?
Yeah, turns out that the best marketing that I've done is kind of word of mouth. Well, let me kind of talk about kind of the things that I've done that I've seen that have worked over time. They're a little bit unpredictable, but first of all, I belong to a group called BNI. That's a networking organization. If people don't know about that, they ought to look into it. There's chapters everywhere. When you go into BNI, every meeting, everybody in the room gets to talk about what they need in their business, what they're looking for. And everybody in the room has a seat. And so I'm the kitchen remodeler in my club. Nobody else in that club is a kitchen remodeler, right? So there's other trades that are in there for sure. Um, but I would recommend that to anybody. in a business like ours, that you take advantage of a network that exists and tap into that. And I think you can be pleasantly surprised by the business that that can generate for you. You'll also be pleasantly surprised by the business you're able to generate for others, which is kind of a fun aspect of that too. So that's um, that's been very effective for me. The other thing is just we're getting now at 2 years, we're starting to get referrals from customers, right? So some of our business is coming that way. The problem with those two is they're unpredictable. Like
Mm.
I can go 90 days and not get a lead from BNI and then get four good customers in the same week.
Yeah.
So it's a little uneven. And the same thing with the referrals from customers and the word of mouth. Now we're getting a little better about working those and asking for them, but that's kind of new for us. But the thing that I'm finding that generates leads is just in a neighborhood where we have business, just going and knocking on doors. Just
Yeah.
spend, take Saturday afternoon in the neighborhood you're in and go knock on doors, introduce yourself, and hey, we're down the street, we're doing this job, and you might have seen our sign out in the lawn or whatever. And I've found that, it might sound like a lot of work, but if I go out and do that 3, 4 hours, I can find two or three leads. And if I can find three leads, I'm going to get one job out of that.
Yeah.
If I can count on that, a lot of times if I find three leads and they're good, I get two jobs. I have about a 40% close rate on. And when I say lead, I mean somebody wants an estimate. They've got a job they want me to come look at. I don't just mean a name and a number, right? So,
That's good, man.
so
That's
I think the way we're going to grow the business now that I've kind of tapped into this knocking on doors is we're just going to knock on more doors,
yeah.
right? We're just
Yeah,
going to
there you
go
go.
door to door and find people who need what we do and kind of play on that because that can scale. You just get more people to knock on doors and coach them what they need to say and get estimates lined up. And you can plug a salesperson in whenever I'm ready to add a salesperson and tell them, here's what you need to do, and here's how you go get the leads, right? You don't have the leads, go get them, right? And so, um, you know, I think I think that's the I think that's what we need to do. So,
That's good, man. That's good. Yeah, I mean, even from my experience, like, I have a couple guys that do outreach for me, and I think that outreach, it's a very interesting game now because there's the one side of it to where it does look like we're moving into more of a digital age and we are moving into more of a um, people don't want to talk to you, right? People don't like to answer the phone, they don't like to answer their door, that kind of
for
thing. But
sure.
still a lot of money in cold outreach like that, and it's definitely been very lucrative for myself, but also I know a lot of guys who even after running ads for 6 months to a year and developing a really hardcore system still to this day doing door knocking because you can't ever let go of those jobs because they can bring a lot in. Uh, I
Yeah.
do want to.
So I mean, I think for me for a while that's kind of it. And then what we're doing is we're trying to get to where we can take 10% of our revenue and set that aside for advertising and stuff like that, so that'll be additive. But I really we've done a lot of advertising in the time we've been open, and we have not been happy with the results. So I really like that we can go out and kind of control. And the more we do the door knocking, we'll get better at what our ratios are. Like how many doors do we actually have to knock on to get a customer, right? And we'll start to see that. But we're seeing results just in doing it for a couple weeks. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of doing that for 3, 4 months and really knowing what those numbers are. Because then you could just work backwards. Like, how many customers do I need? Okay, go out and knock on 400 doors, right? Or whatever it is. I mean, 400 doors is a lot. So that's, you know, that's a lot of doors.
Yeah.
But I can knock on 50 doors in 3 or 4 hours easily, right? So,
Yeah. Well, that too, the metrics there is massive. I think anywhere you got to track the metrics. if you're door knocking, like with like cold calls and cold outreach and all the different platforms and systems that I use as well, it's like every single day I have an end of the day report come to me and I plug that into a software that show or like an Excel sheet that shows me, okay, if I make this many amount of outreaches, this is how many appointments we're gonna have, and this is how many, you know, deposits or whatever. Like we're gonna make that. And you're right, you just reverse engineer it. That's metrics are so important, even in just those little engagements like door knocking, man. That's been big for me. I wanted to chat a little bit about. I know at the beginning you told me how you had kind of were just like looking around for uh, franchise franchises that you wanted to work, and you picked the kitchen and bath tune-up. What
Yeah.
was like the jump? Maybe not on the kitchen and bath tune-up, but like what was the jump just into entrepreneurship? Like, what was the thing that made you say, okay, this is what I'm gonna do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't even know where this came from, but probably for most of my adult life, I've wanted to, I guess I was going to say own my own business. I think really I've wanted to be my own guy, if that makes sense, right? So, owning my own business seemed like the way to get to that place. And I was at a place in my sales career where probably at that point I had, 10, 12 years of work life left if I retired at the normal kind of 67 or whatever, right? And I was like, how do I want to spend this last 10, 12 years? There were some changes at the company that I was at. I'd been there for 10 and a half years and I liked it. It was a good company, very good people. Really, I mean, that's why I was there as long as I was. But there were things that were changing there. And so the question for me was, what do I have to do to kind of succeed with these changes, right? And truth be told, I was going to have to work harder than I had in a little while, and I was going to have to do something. And I thought, there's some gas in the tank here and some money in the bank. And if I'm ever going to do this, I need to do it now because if I don't do it now, I'm probably not going to do it. And then
Yeah,
I'm going to look back and wonder. And there was a little bit of kind of, if I'm going to put the extra energy and do all the things that are required to make this change, where I am, why not do it so it benefits me?
yeah.
Kind of a little selfish there, right? So that was kind of the thought. And I think I was right in that thinking. I think that was the right time for me to do it. There had been, you know, the obligations I had to others and that kind of stuff. They weren't going to get, they weren't going to be any less at any point. And and I probably was, from a resources standpoint, in the best position that I could be in. And if I waited another 2, 3 years, right, then at that point it wasn't going to be worth doing, you know. So,
Yeah.
so that
That's
that's probably waited about as long as you would want to wait to do something like this, right?
but it paid off though at the end of the day, didn't it?
That yes. So it depends on how you count that. In terms of dollars and cents, that kind of remains to be seen. That I believe it will pay off. In terms of the challenge to me personally and my own growth as a human being and just the gratification that comes from kind of going out and accepting a challenge like this, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
What has been your biggest challenge so far? I know you already mentioned like the growing as an entrepreneur or like being a boss was kind of like a big deal, but like what has been maybe just like a specific case. Like do you have a case of some time that was like, wow, this was a rough moment for me, but I was able to pull it out by doing X, Y, and Z?
Oh man, there's been a couple. So just on the hard days kind of thing, right? I remember a particularly hard day. Um, we we had a what in retrospect would be a fairly easy kitchen to do, but it was pretty early in my time doing this. Um, we had a refacing job. It wasn't a huge kitchen, but it was big enough. And I had a guy working for me at the time that basically he was the lead installer, so he was going to do the lion's share of the work. And we had everything scheduled, and this guy, he quit,
Wow.
right? And he quit. Not only did he quit when I was out of town. My son was graduating from basic training, and so we went to the basic training graduation in the Army, and we were out of town, and he just he just quit. And so I went in and did the basically did the installation myself with the help of a guy I didn't know. And he and I did that. We got it done. It actually we got it done, and we were down to kind of the last. It was a Friday evening, and we were working long and late because we were trying to wrap it up and get out of these folks' kitchen so we could be done. And what we should have done in retrospect was we should have stopped at about 4 o'clock, cleaned up, and said, "Hey, we'll be back Monday. We'll wrap this up for you then." But we decided to work late and push through and get done with it because for whatever reason, in my mind, we needed to get it done that day. That's what we said we were going to do, right?
Yeah.
And the customer was kind of, in retrospect, looking back on the customer, I should have. They said, "Okay, that's fine. Whatever." They went out to eat, and we really were wrapping up. We were all but done, and they had this little faceplate underneath a sink. And this is going to sound crazy, but it's a blank plate, right? It looks like a drawer, but it's just a blank plate. There's nothing behind it. But they wanted, or they had some hardware in their old one that was like a little flip out. It held a sponge and stuff like that. And they had asked if we could reuse that. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. Well, the geometry changed when we redid the cabinet and everything. The geometry changed, and that piece would not fit in there, and we couldn't make it work. And I mean, it's like 9:30, and we've been working since 8 o'clock. I'm worn to a frazzle, and we just can't make this work. And I'm literally about to lose. I don't know how to say this. I am about to cry because I'm afraid we're not going to be able to get this done. And and I don't know why I thought it was so important, but I really did. I really was focused on that. And about that time, my phone rings, and an old friend of mine. Like I hadn't talked to him probably in a year and a half when the phone rings, and he calls me. And so I take the call and I go out into the driveway. So I'm out of the house. And he just he just cheered me up. And I went back in there and I told the guy that was working with me, I said, "Hey, let's just pin nail this thing in. And we'll explain to the customer that it just doesn't work with the new job." And it was literally like a just a that phone call was a lifesaver. Because it
Wow.
just let me step away and clear my head and realize, oh, get perspective, right?
Yeah.
And so there's been a few things over the time, this long-winded way of saying sometimes you just have to take a step back and get perspective.
Yeah.
And at the moments where things have been the hardest, that has been really, really helpful. And not for nothing, I have a deep and abiding faith in Christ. And I have found that there are moments where I need something and he just provides what I need.
Yeah.
Uh, the friend to make the phone call, right? Or a new lead that we go out and close a deal, right? So um, I move forward with the confidence that he knows what we need and he's going to provide it. And if what we need is to go out of business, he'll provide that too, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't expect that to happen, but seriously, that makes a big difference. But yeah, I'd say that was, for whatever reason, that was the low moment, and they're fiddling with that faceplate trying to make that little flip out thing work. And, yeah, but yeah, getting on the other side of that, and then you look back at it and you go, "Wow, I really did fixate on that. That was probably not that big a deal, right?" So,
Yeah, man. I've had so many times, especially more recently too, where God has just kind of showed me either after the fact or just during while something was like really heated moment that it really, it wasn't as bad as I had depicted it as and I made this big deal out of something and it's always the worst, man, whenever you have something that happens or something that you think is happening and it turns out it's not actually happening. And so you just kind of made this big like fuss in your brain about like, oh, well, this, XYZ things like in your mind, maybe you were thinking this client's going to get home and they're going to throw a fit and they're going to be so upset that we didn't get this done. And they came home and they're like, oh, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And
yeah,
you
that's
spent the last 2 hours just throwing a fit in your head about it.
yeah.
And
Well, as a matter of fact, when we saw the customer, and was I about the first thing I told them was, "Hey, look, we worked with this, it didn't fit, and we just pinned this shut." Like, oh, okay, yeah, no big deal. They were like, "Yeah, no problem. Okay, thanks for trying." So,
yeah.
yeah, it was pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, like I think in the whole time I've been doing this, that was the low moment. And I think just realizing too, every day that goes by, you learn something and you get better at this. And nothing, even the worst situations, they're not permanent.
Yeah.
You're gonna get on the other side of it. When we've had things where we've done work that wasn't quite to our standards, and the customer's not happy and you're not happy. But one thing I am confident about for sure is when that happens, we're going to make it right, and the customer's going to be happy when we're done. That's just something that, we're not going to leave a job until the customer, unless the customer is totally unreasonable, which we've been very fortunate. We've had very good customers, very happy about that as well. So,
That's good, man. That actually brings me to another point because I did want to talk about this as well. Um, what is a good job for a customer look like? Like what do you do to ensure that your customer gets the best quality results from your work?
well, not for nothing, this is where that training from bath tune-up and kitchen tune-up come in really well, right? So they've given us processes for different things, and I don't want to divulge too much because I don't want to violate any intellectual property or anything like that. But I guess you begin with the end in mind, right? So we have um, suppliers who provide great materials. I don't have any real product concerns. Like I'm not worried about when I put a kitchen cabinet in a customer's home. I'm not worried about the quality of that cabinet. That is a good cabinet. Those suppliers have all been vetted, and now I've sold enough of them. I've seen the quality firsthand. I know that we're getting a good product, and we're going to deliver a good product. So I don't have any issues there. Um, no, it really comes down to like workmanship. So when we're in bathrooms, we do a lot of tile work. There's a lot of fit and finish work, a lot of finish carpentry. And that's all about the caliber of people. I have an installer who's excellent. He has very, very high standards, and he knows what we're after, right? And he's going to make sure that everything, first of all, he has his own personal standards, which are high. And then he's going to make sure that whatever we do is up to our standards. And those are intentionally high. Um, he does a lot of the tile work, and he's very fastidious about that. So we get very good tile work. And that in a bathroom, that's a lot of it. But it's kind of down to finished carpentry and tile work. And all I could say when I said begin with the end in mind is, when something is done well. You know what that looks like. And if I work with a carpenter or something like that, and this fortunately doesn't happen a lot, but if I work with and they've done work that's not up to standard, then they're going to redo it. I mean, and it's going to be right. I'll give you an example. We modified an island here the other day, and there was a place where a couple pieces of wood meet, and there was filler put in there, and it just it just looked tacky. I mean, it looked like something you would do on the back of a barn rather than a finish inside a home.
Yeah.
And I called that out, and we got out our sanders and we smoothed that out and we made it look right. And that was with a sub that fairly new with working with, but I didn't let that go. Right. I mean, I'm like, you gotta make that's gotta be so that when we paint over that, it's gotta be seamless, right? You know, so I'm kind of going on about this, but I think you have to know what you're after and you have to have everybody on the team understand those standards and be shooting for them. And then when they miss them, you've got to absolutely not accept that, even before the customer is aware of an issue and won't accept, and say, we got to fix that. Um, and then I think that's it. You got to know what your standards are, and then make people adhere to them.
I have never heard anyone put it that way. And maybe I just haven't asked the right question, but most of the time when I've ever been curious or even in my own process, right? It's always been like we have these steps. Like we start with the steps of getting the thing in mind, where I think you kind of just like nailed it and brought it all back together. Um, you have the end in mind. And the end is
Yeah,
what we're ultimately looking for. I was even thinking about honestly, you kind of phrased it a bit better than just something I was kind of working on in my own personal life recently. And I actually like I was praying about this and I kind of just heard God just kind of give me this little like pep talk for a second and how I had this idea of how I had to do X thing to get Y thing that would get me Z thing when in reality it was just Z thing happens when you do everything. Like when you do everything right, you get the final thing that you're looking for. And so that was a really good way of putting it, man. I think you just had like kind of just gave me this big realization for my own personal life. Um just worrying about what the end product is going to look like versus focusing on every individual step because if you have the end product lined up like if the puzzle when you get like a puzzle and then the box has like the finished product. Like if you look at
yeah.
this product the whole time and you have that vision, the rest of the way doesn't matter because you're going to get there and you're going to get it right. So I really appreciate you. That was really good advice. Um, yeah, I guess so just to kind of start wrapping things up a little bit. Like I said, I do have a question from the previous podcast. Uh, from the previous podcast, and then you will leave a question for the next guy. So my question to you
Okay.
today is, and this is a really interesting one. I'm excited to see what you have to say. What are you doing to prepare for the next major crisis in the world?
That's that's a really good question. What am I doing for that? Well, that could encompass so much. I actually
Just to give
have.
you a heads up, this question was asked like in September, so I just want to let you know it was a while ago when this question was asked. So,
Yeah, so I actually have a 90-day supply of food ready to go. I have,
are you serious?
yeah, I'm serious.
No way.
By the way, here, helpful tip for your viewers. Um, if your water supply goes bad, what you want to do is cut it off and know that your hot water tank has a lot of water in it, and there's water you can use. So just know that. So as long as that's not tainted. So if you get news of it, so they're just friendly advice. But it also helps to have a few jugs of water somewhere in a closet if because it's going to come down to food and water. That's going to be the first place where you're going to feel it if it's really bad. So I have that. And I'm not a big prepper or anything like that. I don't expect to survive for months on end. It's just if you can't get groceries for a week or two or something like that, I hope to be able to make it through that, right? So that's one thing. Um, we talked about, or I talked about faith in Christ. Understanding that this world is all temporal and that we're just passing through.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a whole bunch of stuff I can't control, and that's good. That's good because you wouldn't want me to control it if I could. I'm not the guy you want in charge of everything. So that's good. Um, Knowing that most of the stuff I can't control is in his hands, that's probably the biggest preparation I do. The other thing is, I'm old enough to know that the big calamity in the world is probably, for me personally, is not going to be the big calamity in the world.
Yeah.
It's going to be much closer to home. It's going to be somebody's going to get an illness, or there's going to be some financial crisis personally or something like that. And that is then really relying on the Lord is first. And then for your health and that, do the right things, do take care of yourself as much as you can. I'm not a big fitness expert or anything like that, but I also don't have a lot of vices. So, if you kind of, try not to, overindulge in the bad things and try to do a little bit of the good things and, love the people around you. Is when the going gets tough, those are the people you need on your side.
Yeah.
And so I think those are the things, right? I mean,
That answer took a wild direction. I thought you were going to go into like, I got this 90-day food supply and I got all these green beans and potatoes. You went to like the exact place where ultimately I think everyone needs to hear. At the end of the day, you got to trust in God, and it's going to hit a lot closer to home than you think it is. It's not going to be like some big war. It's going to be someone
right.
getting sick, financial crisis, man, wisdom.
So,
You have,
well, hopefully at this point in life, there's a little bit.
yeah, yeah. Do you have anything for the audience that you want to say? Final things?
Yeah, just, whatever it is, whether it's running your business and this is a lesson. No, so now I'm preaching to myself. You cannot take too much time preparing. And, on these projects, the more we prepare, the more careful we are in our preparation, the better they go. Almost always when there's something breaks down on a job, it's because we didn't do the proper preparation, or we rushed through it. We didn't take the time. And it's so funny. You get in a hurry and you think, oh, I'm saving time. You're not. You're not. My buddy runs big projects building water towers, and he and I say it all the time: slow down to speed up. Give yourself the time to think and prepare for a job, um, so that when you get on site, you got all the materials, you got the right people, you got the things, and you can just go through it. And you know, so that would be my last parting thought. Prepare.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Where can people find you?
Um, right here. No. So, um, no, if you Google bath tune-up or kitchen tune-up for Northwest Fort Worth, you will find us. We're there. You'll either find our Google business page or you'll find our website or both. That's a good way to find us. I'll go out, I'll get really crazy. If you're in the kind of Tarrant County, Fort Worth area, and you're interested in what we do, you're welcome to call me on my cell phone, 817-845-2852. If you want to exploit that number to sell me something, I might even give you a minute to try to do that as well. So,
Awesome. Well, all right, Mike. It was a great time. Thank you for coming on the show. For people who are watching, all of his information will be in the description so you can reach out to him. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for coming on, Matt.